Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show, and call our listener line and leave a message for our guest. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast, where we explore the muse and music from the North Shore to the South Shore, from New York City to the Hamptons, on the island of Long here in New York. I'm Steve Yusko from gigdestiny.com. Stay tuned as we explore the Long Island Sound. What a great episode we have in store for you today. Matt Marshak from Riverhead, Long Island, an internationally renowned jazz guitarist. But there's a twist. Matt moved into the Americana and Country genre. We had a great conversation today, great insights on the music business. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So stick with us and buckle up for a great ride. In April of 2019, my wife Debbie's friend from work invited us to see her husband, who happened to be a renowned jazz guitarist, play at the Roslyn Hotel. Well, I'm no jazz aficionado, but I'm open to most music, so I thought we'd be spending a night relaxing, having some cocktails, and listening to some jazz. Man, was I wrong. There was a fantastic show, and it was something completely different. This renowned jazz guitarist decided to jump into the world of country and Americana music. And what a show it was. That's the night that I was introduced to Matt Marshak's music, and I've been a fan ever since. So I'm so excited that Matt agreed to be my guest here on the Long Island Sound. And I want to say, welcome, Matt Marshak.
It's great to be with you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yes. This is my pleasure. I'll try to keep the giggling down and tamper down my fandom, but I really enjoyed that night. And it was just kind of a shock to me when you have, it's almost like picking up a glass of water and there's vodka in it, which is, well, that usually happens a lot in my house. But it was really kind of a fantastic night. You had a great opener.
It could have been Frank Persico, one of the two.
Yeah, maybe it was Frank, but it was just a great night. So let's kind of reel back a little bit. And I'm always interested, playing a little guitar myself. Did you come from a musical family? What's your background, and how did you get inspired to say, hey, yeah, I think I can do this?
Well, as far as a musical family, my brother, who's a few years older than me, he was a drummer before I got into guitar. And so he's the one who sort of broke my parents in. He did the dirty work, the hard work. And then once they accepted him, I came along, they're like, oh, here's another. And, but so we were the only ones pursuing music in our family. The town that I was in did have some sort of musical culture in it. Miller Place, Long Island, New York. Sure. And a few houses down was our friend Mike Del Judas, who now plays with Billy Joel.
Oh, sure.
And it was and it was just a lot of musicians in the house when I was a kid, because they were rehearsing with my brother. And he was playing long before I did. And so I would see all sorts of configurations come through the front door. They would play. Sometimes they would leave their gear, and I'd go down and just inspect, look at all the gear and take notes mentally. I wasn't playing at this point, but I was just kind of absorbing the whole culture of a band and music in general. Yeah.
So your parents obviously had to have either earmuffs on or very welcoming. I mean, I think that's great, and I've spoken to a number of musicians who their parents were really influential in giving them that ability to explore things. What's the age difference between you and Chris?
He's 3 years older than I am.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So you're pretty close in age and stuff. So when did you pick up the guitar? Did you start when you were like 4 years old, like a lot of people I talk to, or?
No, I was a late bloomer. I got to think it was late in high school, maybe 10th or 11th grade I started. And
really?
I had taken some lessons maybe early when I was a kid, but like just a couple, and I was more interested in baseball at that time or something. But in high school, I became fully into guitar and fascinated with it. And at that point, at 10th grade, or 11th grade, whenever it was, I I realized I was, starting late. So I would practice 8 to 10 hours every day for the next
I read that and
4 or 5 years. Yeah.
I said, no way, no way. This guy must be like obsessive compulsive or something, and just dived into it. But honestly, I really admire it, because starting to learn the guitar can be, at least for me, was very frustrating, particularly when I got to that F chord, and it's like, oh God, forget it, And I put my guitar down for about 10 years till YouTube came along, and I could watch people, on the cheap show me how to do it. So, what was your first guitar?
It was a very hard to play nylon string guitar.
Like a classical guitar, or?
It was a classical guitar, and I had a great first teacher, but that was the guitar that someone recommended, to my mom or parents. You should get this kind of guitar, and it was like a student, maybe slightly smaller,
right,
nylon string guitar. I just remember it was nylon, so it was easier in some respects. But I just remember the action being high and the tuning being erratic. And if you could make it through that guitar, I think, everything else was sort of like very easy when I got some other instruments later on.
Right. Yeah. Definitely give you something that's difficult to play. I remember I brought a guitar once into Sam Ash, and the guy at the counter said, "This is absolutely unplayable." I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's the guitar. It's not me.
Yeah, but in a number of years later, I would get some better playing guitars, and then I become sort of obsessed with guitars that played well and were intonated well, and that's a whole other story. But initially, it was something that was not the best, but I think maybe that sort of that fight, maybe it kind of it was a challenge for me, to get that old nylon string to sound good.
Nice. What's interesting is, so now it's you're like a sophomore in high school out in you said Miller Place, and you go through high school and then you go to college. Actually, my sister went to Geneseo, and a number of people I know went to Geneseo, which is upstate New York in the middle of farmland with a lot of cows, I recall.
Right. Yes.
So did you play in college, or how did?
Yeah, I did. At that point, I was I was studying sociology, and just was away at college, and sort of music was something I was passionate about, and brought the guitars, my electric guitars to college. I remember practicing. The Zoom had just come out, the first Zoom.
Wow.
And so I would go out into the hallway, in the dorm, and I would, with the headphones on like this, I would practice with this, plug my electric guitar, and then I would have some sort of like a Walkman, I think it was, that you could run into the Zoom and you could play along. And I would just spend hours and hours at college really getting into guitar. And then eventually joining a band in college that played more of like rock and roll, R&B, that sort of thing, fraternity parties, and
cover band stuff,
some blues, some Stevie Ray Vaughan. I remember that kind of thing. Yeah.
So just to give a reference point for people listening, not the Zoom that we have today on our screens, but the Zoom recorder was one of the first digital recorders, handheld digital recorders that came out.
Yeah, it had like all these really like 1980s-ish heavy rock guitar sounds, and you would put the headphones on, and it had a lot of effects, but it was a good tool. I think it even had a metronome. So I would that's what and occasionally when no one was in the dorm room, I would play through my amp or whatever.
So I got to ask you this. I'm going to jump into left field with this, because a lot of people use their iPhone or their phone when they get the muse, the inspiration for a song. What do you do when it comes? Do you sit down to write? Do you stop what you're doing when the muse comes? Do you record snippets? What's your process, I guess? I'm curious.
It varies. Sometimes I do like to just plug in to Logic, or used to be GarageBand. I just plug in, and if I have an idea, I'll just put it down, either just free time, or if I want to be particular, I'll put a click or a drum pattern on there, just to catalog the idea and see if there's any sparks there that I could further develop. And I call it like taking it for a test drive. See how this idea in my mind holds up, on tape, and see what it sounds like. Occasionally, like today, someone asked me for a show I'm doing on Saturday if they could send a demo of this song that I hadn't recorded. So I just pressed, the voice recorder on the iPhone and made a little quick demo and sent it to my friend who I'm playing with Saturday in Massachusetts. So I've done it many ways. It used to be when I first started a cassette recorder, captured my ideas on a cassette and then eventually, the iMac came out with GarageBand, and that was heaven. You could get a great sound right into the computer.
The good thing is now you're dating yourself and getting a reference point because you actually know what a cassette is. So that's good. So you're not like 25.
Yeah, I'm like in between. I'm old enough to remember the past, but young enough to remember the new development. So I'm like, I know the old music business and I know the new music business. I'm sort of right on that fence.
Yeah, it's really changed. And of the people that I've spoken to in the music business, what I find so interesting, it's kind of parallels TV, where we went from 3 stations to 5,000 stations, or all these competing platforms for the music. And you can certainly get your music up there kind of quick, and then it can just sit there. So you have to do the persistent work that you did when you learned your craft to get it out there and have other people hear it. And that's what I like about podcasts. It gives us that opportunity, and kind of self-promotion here, given that opportunity to kind of explore what's happening behind just a couple of tunes is the way that I've been approaching it. And the feedback I've gotten from my audience is, hey, I'm so glad you play the whole tune, because it really gave me a good flavor of what the artist was about, particularly when you hear the story behind them and stuff.
Sure.
So why don't we'll just take a quick break here, and when we come back, let's talk about some of your musical influences. I'm really interested in the bridge that you have now between Americana Country and jazz. It's kind of unique. So, hey, everybody, stick with us. We'll be right back with Matt Marshak.
Come see Matt Marshak live at Bistro 72 in Riverhead, Saturday, March 26th at 6 p.m. Singer-songwriter and guitarist Matt Marshak, with a history of 10 albums in the jazz blues genres, and the release of Matt's latest album, Simple Man, finally showcases Matt's acoustic guitar-based singer-songwriter material. We get a glimpse into the folk, country, and songwriting side of Matt's music. Influenced early by the sounds of Paul Simon and James Taylor, Matt's connection with song, imagery, and the story have long been his favorite way to communicate musically. His latest songs, Prayer for You, Tell Me Something Good, and Here and Now, bring a relatable, reassuring message for the world during this time. Join us on Saturday, March 26th at 6 p.m. at the Bistro 72 inside the Indigo Hotel in Riverhead. We're going to have food, fun, and great music. Come join us.
All right. We're back with Matt Marshak. And Matt, what I really am interested in is what influenced you after college? You probably did the cover band thing after college around Long Island, like most guys do. But what pulled you into jazz? What really kind of hooked you to say, yeah, this is really it for me?
Well, after college, I started playing guitar in New York City for a lot of singer-songwriters, Bleecker Street, the whole thing. And, the music business was still at large. So the idea of playing with an artist and getting signed, and that was the route people still took. So there was this whole allure to that. And I like playing guitar for people. But after doing that for a number of years and you're dealing with some temperamental singers.
The word deep comes to mind. Yeah.
And my ear got caught by this format that I was hearing in New York City called, and I'm not a big fan of the term of the genre because I think it's limiting, but they called it smooth jazz, right? And there was a station called CD 101.9.
Oh yeah, I remember it well.
So I became a fan of this. I started hearing all these instrumental guitar players who were getting sort of mainstream coverage, which is pretty amazing. This is in the 90s, and it's into 2000. And I became fascinated with where it was sort of, blues playing, but then there was sort of jazz playing and pop all blended together, R&B. Mm-hmm. And it was something I just felt natural, like I could write. And at this point, I wasn't really singing. My voice wasn't something I was developed. I was writing songs. I was writing stuff that was, the seedlings of what I'm doing now, more of like sort of singer-songwriter things. I would write some sort of Paul Simon, James Taylor type stuff that I was listening to, but I was still fixated on the guitar. And the whole idea of becoming an instrumentalist popped into my head where, wow, you could actually lead a band with the guitar. I don't have to be a singer. I don't need a singer. I could be the focus and I could lead this thing the way I want. And that became really exciting to me, the whole idea of it. So I just recorded an instrumental guitar album. I had no expectations about it. And it was a mix of sort of everything I had listened to, particularly influenced by Larry Carlton, who was this guitar player who was featured at a lot of the Long Island venues, IMAC Theater,
Sure.
Westbury Music Fair, and the Blue Note in New York City. There was something about Larry Carlton's playing that I really loved because he seemed to blend everything into this really accessible, nuanced way. And I just became, and his tone was just unbelievable, like how he got this guitar to just sound so sweet. Mm-hmm. And I became really interested, and I studied his playing and why he was playing these notes on top of these chords. And I studied with a great teacher in Setauket area called Rich Rabidin, who was kind of guided me into this style of music and the scales and the chords and sort of forward motion playing and all this. So I recorded this CD. I had no expectations.
Just throwing it out there, so to speak, right?
Yeah, put it out, and it found its way into the hands of like one of the biggest managers in the jazz business, and he called me, and I thought this was it. I was like, hey, this is it. I'm on my way.
we hit lotto, honey.
And then this is when you start to realize, the whole music business, but it's good. You have to experience this stuff. Nothing really ever panned out with that. So a few years later, that very station, CD 101.9, I guess at the time American Idol was out, so they wanted to do something along that line, and they had this great talent search for the best new artist in New York. So I submitted, my demo, and we were selected as a finalist, and we played the finals, and we actually end up winning this thing.
Wow!
So I established this good relationship with that station, and over the number of years, they start playing my music, and we start playing some of the venues and some restaurants we were playing in Huntington, and then eventually we start playing the IMAC, the very venue where I was going to hear these people who inspired me. And luckily through that, people noticed my name, and I was invited to play other festivals, and my agent approached me, Steve Butler in New York City, and started booking me around the world. So that one little CD turned into 10 instrumental records I did. So 10 and touring the world in Europe, and it was an amazing run that I had for 10 years or so, 15 years.
Were you single at the time when you were traveling around the world?
Actually, I was married right when everything, the touring started, right about the time I got married. And so maybe my wife was a good luck charm, but she was definitely an encourager because
she definitely was a good luck charm. You got to put that in there. Yeah.
But I didn't have a daughter at that time. So, but I would go to Europe. I remember going to Slovakia, Germany, Spain, Czech Republic. Wow. And then all over the country, virtually every weekend I was in North Carolina, Texas, California.
It's interesting. And I'm not a professional musician, but in my career in sales, early in the marriage, I was traveling so much, and it has a certain allure to it, but then it can get really kind of tiring. And what was a wake-up call for me is when the hotel room was more familiar to me than the master bedroom.
Right.
And the one thing I noticed, because I listened to your songs and watched the videos. It was kind of cool. You have one where you're playing in Oyster Bay or Montauk and all these different places. And I'm always thinking in my mind, what's he thinking about this particular location? So it's kind of cool where it's close. You've been around the world, but you're doing videos. Maybe it's convenient, but it's cool to see places around Long Island.
Where I'm at right now, this kind of all leads to where I am now, because you get caught up in. I was very blessed and thankful. I had some great opportunities, play premier jazz festivals, and I was on stage with the very people who influenced me, and having a chance to meet them. And
wow.
And I mentioned Larry Carlton. I can remember getting asked to play the Dubai Jazz Festival in the Middle East. And wow. Larry was on the day before, and I got to see him play there. And then like a few weeks later, we were in Wisconsin playing. And so the very people who influenced me, I had a chance to, be a part of the same festivals with them.
So you went from being a fan to being a colleague, and a respected colleague, to be honest with you, right? I mean,
yeah. But it was great. It was great. And and like you say, at first there is an allure to the whole thing, right? You're usually playing, visiting these amazing places and staying at great hotels, and you get treated really well. And everything's usually first class in the jazz world. And
Oh, nice.
very nice. But the music business is very unpredictable, right? So, and sometimes after you do 10, I did 10 records, and there's maybe 150 songs I wrote and recorded. Like, that's a lot of music.
Yeah, sure.
So we were constantly I was constantly out of the house, flying all over the place. But even about, I would say 10 or 15 years I did that. But all along, while I'm playing, jazz and instrumental guitar, blues, I'm always listening to other kinds of music, and I'm always intrigued. And I might be going to play a jazz festival, but during the week I'm driving around, I might be listening to Vince Gill. I might be listening to Paul Simon. It could be James Taylor. It could be something very different from the music I'm playing.
What I find interesting about that, particularly when you told the story about supporting singer-songwriters in New York City, and then you're opened up to the world of jazz, which has to be extremely freeing, and where you can go in all these different directions. And it's unfortunately, I think, in our minds and in the marketplace, they want to categorize people right quick and get you labeled, and you're doing this. I think that's why many of the artists spend a lot of time reinventing themselves, multiple times. It kind of broadens their horizons. It gives you that freedom to explore other music that you like, and say, I can contribute to that.
Right. Yeah. And then sometimes there's this, you realize you got this one go, like I have a new song right now that's coming out, but there's a line in there. You got this one go around, right? You got this one go around, and if all you do is one thing, or if you're a chef in a certain kind, if you like cooking a certain type of food, and that's all you want to do, and you do that for your whole life, but maybe you want to try a different style of cooking and some other influences, and it's still cooking, right? But you want to try. I want to get into this kind of cuisine, or this niche thing, or hybrid stuff where you're mixing different types of food or cooking. And in music terms, I was always, intrigued by different kinds of music.
Well, I think what that can do for you is, there's two words that popped out when I was looking at your bios and doing a little bit of homework, and one was persistence in your craft and everything else, but persistent in being creative and opening up those doors and really exploring that. There's that need, maybe because we're men, we can't create babies and delivering them, but there's other things we like to create, and there's a certain sensibility to say, hey, I did that. It's something that never existed before. And for me, it might be nailing two pieces of wood together, to fix something and say, hey, I did that, and have my brother-in-law come and look at it and say, yeah, you did that? Yeah, we'll fix it later.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah, to take something that was an idea, a thought, a little, germ of an idea, or just an inkling of something, and then to fully realize it and deliver it, that's the greatest satisfaction. And sometimes it turns out maybe as you imagine, sometimes not as you imagine, sometimes greater than you expected, and sometimes it doesn't have the same impact that you hope for. Like I've seen it all ways.
Right.
Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, and sometimes you're let down.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing in listening to your music and in conversation, what came to mind is you have a kind of like a spiritual sensibility thread running through your music, and the way it comes out, which is really beautiful, in my opinion. We're going to jump to one of your tunes, but in everything that's going on, we've got to recognize that all the difficulties, and probably in many of the countries you went to visit, the difficulties. We're coming out of COVID, which seems to be a fraction of an inconvenience of what's happening in the world. But I believe that sensibility, of hope, of frankly God's hand in things and recognizing it, and the music is a great language to deliver this. It's real. I think you have something really great to contribute to deliver hope to the world. So I really appreciated that in your music.
Thank you.
And as I say that lead up, let's talk about the song "Prayer for You" just a little bit, and then we'll listen to it, and then we'll come back and talk more about it. So tell me about "Prayer for You."
Okay, "Prayer for You." So we were talking about earlier, making this transition. You're listening to other music, and And I think I hit a wall, like with maybe some of the business aspects in the jazz world, which, it happens. It's a fickle business, and the business can be unpredictable. But all along, I was writing all this music. It was brewing. Something was bringing it to me, right?
Okay, right.
So I went to Nashville for actually a jazz event, and for Epiphone guitars, and I was playing one of my instrumental songs, but they featured other artists after in other genres. And following me was a famous Nashville songwriter who also played Epiphone acoustic guitars. His name was Steve Dean.
Okay.
And Steve Dean's written, songs for Reba McEntire. He had songs for going back to Waylon Jennings up to Dierks Bentley. And
oh wow.
And I'm trying to think of he had this one big monster hit in the 90s, but he was right after me, and we started talking. And eventually, through another friend, we had a writing session.
Wow.
And it was something I was writing, but I had never really put forth these ideas. And it sounded like a great new experience, new people. And we had a great writing session. We wrote a song or two. And that led eventually to Prayer for You, which was a collaboration between myself, Steve, and another writer, Cara Hogan from Nashville. The three of us wrote Prayer for You. So that transition led to a chance meeting, and then delivered this new song, which was on my new album, Simple Man, which was a pretty significant departure in music because it went to all vocal music. Right. And it pretty much a 180 in genre, from pretty much instrumental funky jazz to rootsy country, bluesy, Americana kind of music. Yeah.
Let me ask you this before we jump into the song. Were you a collaborative type of guy when it came to songwriting, or did you tend to bring a song and have people join in and influence it slightly? How would you define yourself as far as that process?
Yeah, I had done collaborations in the past, but not like this. It's just three writers, a couple guitars and computer or notepad, and the whole idea is to just let's get a great song together, and you chime in a line. And you chime in a line, and maybe we'll try this bridge, and let's bring this back. Now that line is not as strong. And within a matter of an hour, you've had this, this a bunch of verses and stuff whittled down to like 3 verses and a B section. And Steve is a master of that, taking a song and making it very concise, which was something I learned from him. And just, you don't need a whole lot.
Right.
Make what you have count. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so let's take a listen to Prayer for You.
Even though I don't know your name, and I know I can't feel your pain, it don't matter what you're going through, I will say a prayer for you. Everybody hurts sometimes, and this world can be so unkind. Even if you're feeling all alone, and you ain't got a place to call your own, nowhere to turn, you don't know what to do, I will say a prayer for you. Everybody hurts sometimes, and this world can be so unkind. And it's the least that I can do, and I will say a prayer for you. I will say a prayer for you. There's a story only you can tell, and judging from your eyes, you've been through hell. No, I can't walk a mile in someone else's shoes, but I will say a prayer for you. Everybody hurts sometimes, and this world can be so unkind, and it's the least that I can do. Ooh, I will say a prayer for you. I will say a prayer for you. And even though I don't know your name, and I know I can't feel your pain,
Man, that was a great song, and I always think about songs, and what struck me about this song, I think there's two ways that people have said to me, I'll pray for you, okay? And some people will say, yeah, I'm praying for you. You know, that's if I did something wrong. That's obviously not the thread in this song, but the world needs prayer, so it was a beautiful prayer in the song, so thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Thanks for featuring it. And yeah, that was a song that's just, it's sort of about just having well wishes for people who you don't even know, and as who might need that prayer somewhere. And it works for all of us, I guess, if we do that.
Right. So let's. I'm going to ask you a question maybe that nobody's asked you, because you talked about taking sociology in college, right? And that there might be that. Maybe I'm recognizing that thread of social justice or looking out for the other that comes through a lot of your music. You know, I'm hopeful that more of this type of social justice music comes out and brings attention to the downtrodden, which is on the news every day. But maybe I'm finding something that's not there, but that's something I think I recognize in what I know of your music.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of it, and it's something I've always had in me. Not really, I wouldn't say religious per se, but maybe more just spirituality. And I think when I was doing my first out of town gig, I was a sort of a young, nervous wreck, and what am I doing with my life kind of thing. And I was on some flight to Reno, Nevada, and
wow,
and all these career things and responsibility, and is this, am I making the right decision? What's going on? Should I be doing this? And I read this great book by Wayne Dyer called The Power of Intention.
Okay.
And that book sort of set me on a path to just open my mind to certain principles of faith and just the way you should live your life and the way you treat people, and how when you kind of, he used to say, change the way you think. And I'm sorry, I'm mixing up the words here. He used to say, change the way you look at things, and the things that you look at will change. And so just have an optimistic mindset for the world, find the good, be as kind as you can. And that generosity and that kindness just kind of finds its way back into your life. And
yeah, I agree in that. It's all from perspective, as far as how you look at your fellow man, whether you look down at them as if they're downtrodden or look at them as a person, and bring out that humanity. That's kind of key. I think of all the times that I made prejudgments of, who's that SOB coming up the shoulder driving past me, and I'm going to squeeze over to him, not thinking why. And I'll tell you an embarrassing story just really quickly. In tune to that is there was a guy driving up the shoulder, and this traffic jam was in Westbury, and I rolled down the window and I said, "Where do you think you're going?" Being a wise guy. He said, and this is, I think, it just gives me the raises the hair on my arms. He said, my daughter was just in an accident of trying to get to her car. And my heart went in my throat, and I learned a lesson that day. I still have to remind myself of that lesson. And I think that's where music can help us remind us of lessons of
Yeah.
Perspective, how to look at things differently.
Yeah. I can relate to that. And,
Yeah. I'm getting too deep for this Long Island Sound podcast.
It's like I have a pretty diverse life as far as people in my life of all walks of life and faiths and beliefs, and I actually thrive off it. I love it. Just I'm comfortable anywhere.
That's a good perspective to have. I know when I went to school, I studied ecumenism, which is the truth of God in all faiths, and it was like a report I had to do, and it really kind of opened up my eyes to a lot of things. It's not I'm right, you're wrong when it comes to spiritual things, but there's room for everybody in exploration, I think.
And I kind of I guess it all merges as previously we were talking about playing instrumental music, and it was great, but once you start, once I felt comfortable just as a singer and songwriter, these things that were sort of embedded in the instrumental music that you could maybe pick up on now, they became quite literal with the exact words telling you or kind of pointing you in to really how I feel as a person, which is a very vulnerable thing. It's instrumental music. You can kind of hide behind that guitar and no one really, you could play the notes, but now once you start singing and you have exact words that match, the melodies and lyrics, people have a pretty good idea who you are and what you're talking about. But in some ways you can really convey a message in a whole different way. And I felt like a more compelling way, more revealing way, just another dimension with the voice and the words. The guitar is always a part of it to me now, maybe more of a accompanist sort of vibe, but it's still part of the mix. But I think that was the big allure and the big attraction. And just as you evolve as a person too, you want to, you want to write some songs that are going to really affect the world, affect people, hopefully provide some reassurance and comfort. And I think that was the main inspiration. And because some people, ask me like, well, you're doing something totally different. Why are you doing that? And
Matt, what happened to you?
Stay in this genre, and we know you as this. Please stay as that. And when you start to change and grow, it unfortunately will make some people uncomfortable. But you just hope that they come around.
It's risky too, career wise. There's a certain you put yourself out there. All right, I got a question for you. You travel a lot. How did travel affect your music? The positions, your perspective, with all the traveling that you did. And let me just give a little more context. What's interesting to me about jazz and instrumentals, it's universal, wherever you're going.
Right.
And now you're moving to songwriting, I assume, in our native language, English. But so there's a change up. Anyway, tell me.
Yeah, well, as far as travel, the big thing that happened was I started to play, I want to say most of my shows for when I started playing instrumental jazz, and they were south. I mean, from Maryland, Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, to Texas, all these. I was in the South a lot.
A lot of foreign countries, yeah.
The Carolinas. So now you're going down to play a jazz festival or a concert, which is 2 hours, but the remainder of the time you're in the South. And the culture of the South was a big effect upon me. Just I felt very at home there and very welcomed, and the generosity I was shown was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I started really, really hearing, country and Americana music and blues, like firsthand in other venues, or just when you're in a restaurant, or just it was everywhere. So that was like this sort of unintentional influence. I was intrigued by it. I can remember going to do a show opening for, I think it was Boney James, and they lost my equipment. So the first thing we had to do was in Charlotte, North Carolina, is go to a music store. So I'm in the music store. And if you've ever been to like the music stores in Long Island, it's, you walk in and there's 100 kids playing the latest rock riffs, right?
Playing Zeppelin, yeah.
Yeah, and then over and over and over, louder and louder. And I walked into this music store, and it was like this big shift. And I heard there was like a teenager just playing this Telecaster, in this beautiful lead country guitar, like just impeccable. And I'm like, my jaw dropped. And then there was another kid in the other part started doing the same thing. And I was like, unreal. Like it was just, there was a culture shift, and I was exposed to a different world. And that influenced me too. Just some of the people I met, musicians I met, friends, and I eventually stayed in their homes and had partnerships and all sorts of concerts, and which are still standing today. It was a different world coming from, Long Island, New York, and now I'm in this deep South in Alabama, and some of these people have become great friends of mine. And so that was sort of one of the, traveling. That was, you asked, how did it affect me? It exposed me to a whole other world. I
remember the first time I went to Memphis, and going on Beale Street was, we went to B.B. King's, and there was a lady that was the queen of Beale Street, who was just, I don't remember her name, just amazing. And you walk 2 blocks, a block, every block, open, well, it's warmer, so all the venues are opened out to the street, and you could hear music from one place to the next. Something that we generally don't. Yeah, you didn't experience that in Mount Sinai. I can probably guarantee that. I wish, maybe it's a weather thing, but that kind of experience is really kind of unique. To hear the blend and the cacophony of sounds that come out, and how a culture influences it. Just the local culture, I think, is really kind of cool. That's what's great about America. It's so diverse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I thrive off. I love being in new situations, new places, new ways of doing things, and different customs. And I like to, maybe it's a sociologist. I mean, I take it in, and that's how I think it's opened my mind to anything. Just there doesn't have to be barriers, parameters, and or classifications of music. I'm this, I'm that, and I play music now. I mean, I play music. It's me. It's the same me, but it may be a little more rootsy and twangy of late. But you never know. It's still me, and
I think it's great, because then you're exposed to a whole new audience and new collaborations and stuff like that. I think, man, what's healthier than that? I personally, I like meeting new people. I like interviewing people, finding out what makes them tick, maybe asking the questions that aren't answered. This is just, we've never, I've seen you on stage. We spoke via email, and here we are chatting away, which is a beautiful thing. It's kind of neat. So so now that COVID's kind of wrapping up, you're back on the road, I assume, right?
Yeah, so we have a show this Saturday there's a great folk society up in Massachusetts, outside of Boston, and they had a songwriting competition in the fall, and we were part of it. And I ended up winning this songwriting competition.
What's with you with these things?
Yeah, I know. It's like my brother jokes with me. He's like, hey man, you seem to have luck with those things. Do it. So
we figured it out.
And we entered it. I'm like, when you're trying to find, when you're writing new music that's sort of different, I didn't have too many connections outside of the jazz world. So it's really it's in some ways starting over, which is exciting. We won this competition. So we have our own concert in Mansfield, Massachusetts, for the Rose Garden Folk Society, a coffee house, they call it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be up there on Saturday to perform. And then we have a show in Long Island at the Hotel Indigo.
Yep, I'm going to be there with Debbie.
Yeah, and then we have a few other things in the works right now. Yeah.
Okay, that means you're coming back for a second episode of the Long Island Sound, so we can unwrap. You know why? Because we're going to have a songwriting contest in the Long Island. There's an idea.
There you go.
Oh, I feel like stopping the show right now. I'm writing this down. Songwriting contest. Excellent idea. All right, we just stole that from Matt Marshak.
There you go.
And hey, Matt, let's talk about the next song, Way Down. Give me a little bit background on that. We'll listen to that, and then we'll come back after that. So give me some background on the Way Down.
Way Down is sums up some of what we talked about. It's the reality of the music business and being a musician. it's about all the ups and downs, and one minute you're on top and the next minute you're below it. That says it in the song, and just about everything I need to know. And if you're a musician, you learn humility, you learn how to endure, you learn criticism, you learn how to be vulnerable, you learn all these things, and sometimes it's painful, but at the end of it, it makes you a stronger, better person, better writer, better songwriter. Because if you have nothing to write about, I don't know if you're going to be able to affect people when you go through some stuff.
Right. Yeah,
and the music business will present stuff for you. I mean,
it'll give you calluses and scars, and if you can get through those scars, you may have something to write and sing about. I guess.
Right. It's like, maybe earlier I was maybe painting a glorified experience, which there was many great moments, but in between there was, there's rough spots, up spot, down, times when you're down or things aren't working the way you want it, the business is not treating you right, and your expectations are maybe not being met, and you have a different idea, and all these pressures of life and music. So this song is about really being in that journey of music, and it's sort of a mix of funk and country music. So it's a really weird, really interesting combo there.
Funky country, we'll call it funky country. All right, here we go with Way Down. Stick with us.
Yesterday, watching all my dreams fade away. One minute you're on top, next minute you're below. Just about everything I need to know. I'm talking about way down. This old heart of mine. Way down, this heart of mine. I've been dreaming to the end of time. My way down, this heart of mine. I've been dreaming to the end of time. I'm talking about way down, this old heart of mine. Pass me by. Sometimes I break down and cry. So many smiles after so many miles. Time for me to give it one more try. Got to savor every day. Precious time, don't you fade away. You got to follow your heart. Let God do his part. Everything is gonna be okay. I'm talking about way down, this old heart of mine. Yeah, way down, way down. Finally the tide starts to turn. Still I got so much to learn. Now I'm on my way, gonna play my song today. Thinking about the price I'm gonna pay. I'm talking about way down, this old heart of mine. I said way down, this heart of mine. I said way down, this heart of mine. I said way down, this heart of mine.
We're here with Matt Marshak, and that was way down. And funky about the ups, downs, and sideways. What album is that on? That's So, you're obviously a diverse guy, going from jazz to country. Well, I had read that you had done some work with kids and kids' music. So tell us about that. Like, how did that happen? And it sounds very
Sure. So, out of college, I got a job as a preschool teacher. I was a preschool teacher. That was my job. And I was playing in bands at the time and getting off work, then doing gigs, getting home at 4 in the morning. That's when you used to play from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Right? Pre-internet, right? So I would I was getting tired and I wasn't able to really focus. So I said, what can I do? I have this ability to work with children. I play music. What could I do to have some more time so I can work on my first record, right? And I'm a 20-something-year-old, and I'm like, why don't I develop a children's music program? So I crafted up some flyer, and the response was unbelievable. And I said, well, maybe I'm onto something. And I said, all right, this will give me more free time. It'll fund my record, and then I'll be done with this, and I'll move on to my into the spotlight of being a guitar player.
So the big project.
That was the thinking, right? It was going to be a temporary thing. And little did I know that this children's program would grow and grow to the point where I think I told you on the break, like just today, I had 5 or 10 schools and libraries calling me to come perform for their children, and it's been a blessing because not only you get to pass your inspiration on to the next generation, but sometimes now I don't have to tour as much. I could do some shows at schools, and it's very fulfilling. And through those journeys, I've written a bunch of music for children, and my brother Chris has been a part of it too. And we had a song recently we did a video for called, it was a Mr. T-Rex, and it was sort of this sort of twangy rootsy kids song, and it's sometimes I work really hard on this guitar piece or this song, and like, okay, and I read a T-Rex song, a dinosaur song. It's like the emails start coming in. I'm like, and the parents, and that song's awesome. I'm like, well, all right, sometimes it could be quite interesting in that regard because you make children smile and sing for them. It means a lot. The world needs it. The children need it, and I do both. I love being around in a school, in an auditorium, entertaining the kids, being silly, being goofy, and then at times we're serious with the music, and we teach the children about sort of rhythms and tempos, and sometimes we're having a good time. So I do a fair amount of this, and thankful to have these opportunities.
That's really neat. You never know where these seeds of inspiration are going to lead. And someday one of these kids are going to come up on stage with Matt Marshak and say, hey, I'm a colleague now and you inspired me. And I'm not joking. I could see that happening because sowing those seeds are a true blessing what you do, So I tell you, Matt, it's really been a lot of fun doing this. I really appreciate your time in doing this. We'll get this out right before, and we'll get to see you out at Hotel Indigo. I think it's called Bistro 72. That's Saturday, the 26th, right, from 6 o'clock. So we're looking forward to that. And I end my podcast a lot of times. My friend Bob Murray told me, and he was told by Joe Torre of all people. Bob was doing some sort of volunteer work, and he says, it's nothing. And Joe Torre said to him, no, Bob, we can account for what we own, what we have in our bank account. We can never account for the time that we have left. So when you give me your time in this podcast and have a conversation with me, it's really priceless. And I really
thanks so much for this opportunity. It's great to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff, and I think the stuff that makes us human. That if someone listens to my music, they may never get to hear this sort of the story or the behind the scenes stuff. And I actually enjoy talking about this stuff that, it shows the person behind the music, behind the official music narrative, all these sort of standard interviews are about the music and what amp you're using. I like to hear about the person and what they're going through, the bumps in the road they've hit, the struggles they've had, what else they do in their life. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, Matt Marshak, thank you for your time. We'll see you on Saturday the 26th.
Be well, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.